Number 1. Almost 2 years ago, I was at school in a small college town. I was admittedly a bit naive, as I had been raised in a pretty safe small town. The apartment I lived in was a basement apartment. Our windows looked out about a foot over the ground, and my bedroom window was right in front of the visitor parking. So this one night, a guy I had been on a couple of dates with wanted to stop by and catch up. It was about 1 in the morning, so I suggested I come out and talk to him, as to not wake my roommates. I saw his headlights shine into my room and went out. So, we are sitting and talking in his car that has extremely tinted windows, facing my still lit bedroom window, when I see someone, an older guy, about 45 to 55 years old. He started wandering through the visitor parking, peeking at all the cars there. He was tall, about 6'4", and lanky. Our parking is heavily patrolled, so I remarked that he was probably peeking at all the cars there, probably just looking for violations. I could have sworn he saw us sitting in the dark car. Then, because he froze and stepped closer, staring. After a couple of seconds, he seemed content with what he was doing, and I thought he was going to leave. Instead, he walked 10 feet ahead and put his face to my bedroom window. He crouched and began leaning side to side, trying to get a better view, which he obviously would never get. I was frozen and began shaking. The guy I was with was no help either. He remarked how the man had walked straight to my window, even though there were plenty of other lit ones. He wondered out loud how long this had been happening, and how it didn't seem like it was the first time. I was still in shock. I reached for my phone to call the police, and he said something like, "I doubt this is a real emergency. He's probably harmless, just creepy." I was not thinking clear enough to tell him otherwise. All the while, this guy was still just crouched by the window, staring in. It was probably a solid 5 minutes before the guy suddenly stood up and turned to leave in the opposite direction. I felt like, if nothing bad happened at my window, he would probably just come back another time, and I would never feel safe. So, I grabbed the handle of the door. The guy I was with again told me not to get involved, but he wasn't doing anything, so I threw open the door and shouted after the guy. He stopped in his tracks, about 30 feet away from me. "Hey, you window watcher, you creep!" Not my most eloquent, but at the moment, he registered he'd been caught and started sprinting away. I think for a second I forgot I was 5'5" and 115 pounds, and screamed, "Yeah, you'd better run." When he was out of sight, I sat back in the car and panicked for a bit longer. I told the guy I was going to call the police. He told me he had to go play Halo with his boss, and that he would turn on his brights to make sure I got in okay. Keeping in mind here that the guy just took off in the direction of my front door and there were no lights on outside, I was furious with the guy, but I didn't want to talk to him, so I just bolted out of the car and ran to my house. I called the non-emergency line because he had me questioning if it was a big enough deal to warrant 911. I had 3 cruisers at my place within 2 minutes. While I stood with them, I happened to peek down my own window. It was just chilling how much of my room I could see. This is how I'd kept my blinds positioned for my entire time there, and I could see my entire bed. Later that night, I wrapped up my window in a sheet, so I didn't know if this was his only visit or if he saw a lot more. But Ichabod Crane, nickname with a bad pun courtesy of my dad, let's not meet. Number 2. This happened when I was around 3 years old, and it's probably my earliest memory. A little background. I was raised in the bad part of South Central Los Angeles. I lived with both parents in a small little house, and there was an alley directly behind the house. At the time, if I'm not mistaken, my parents were renting a room to a friend they had, but he doesn't have much to do with this story. This happened on a Monday morning, due to the fact that the day before had been a family day, and my dad worked Monday through Saturday. I remember waking up and remembering that the night before, my dad had got me a toy from one of those machines you put a quarter in and twist, and ta-da! Toy. My mum is the type to not go out unless she has to, and that includes getting out of her room. And because I was small, I was stuck in the bedroom with her. I was not going to stay in that bedroom without my toy, so I kept bugging and asking until she finally said yes. I was never the type of child to insist once my parents had said no, so I got up from the bed and put my flip-flops on. My mum disliked me walking barefoot, I think it's a Hispanic thing, and walked towards the living room. The living room was before the kitchen, so standing in the living room you could see all of the kitchen and the kitchen window, which was all the way in the back of the house. From the window you could see the alley where all the hoodlums and alcoholics would hang out. So, as I'm picking up my toy in the living room, I hear a noise in the kitchen. I look to my left and see there's a man with his leg in the sink, crouching to get his head inside the house through the window. At the same time he gets his head in, he sees that I'm looking at him, and I run as fast as my little legs allowed me into the bedroom. I'm so scared and crying. I tell my mum there's a man climbing through the window. As I'm telling her, we hear the kitchen window bang shut. At that point, I was terrified, because it was just my mum and I, and we were assuming that the man was in the house. My mum left me in the room and rushed out to see what was going on. By the time she got to the window, she saw him climbing his fence and running down the alley. I sat there trying to figure out why anyone was trying to climb through the window. I even suggested the fact that the guy was renting the room there had forgotten his keys and, casually tried climbing through the window. A few days later, my mum saw the same guy inside our neighbour's apartment, and I'm not sure if they ever caught him or not. I can't imagine what could have happened if I hadn't seen him. Or should I say, if he hadn't seen me. I don't know if he would have tried to harm us, or simply run away. Who knows, but I am glad I didn't have to find out. I had nightmares about it for a while. So, to the guy who attempted to climb in through the window, I'm glad we didn't get to really meet, and I hope we never do. Number 3. This experience happened to me a year ago. I'm 16 now. I still have nightmares about it. So, let me tell you the layout of my house. My room is in the front part of the house, whereas my parents' and brother's room is in the back part. So my room is further away from the other rooms. Next to my room is the laundry room. The laundry room leads to the back room. The back room leads to the back porch outside. In the back room is a huge window that you can see out into the back porch and yard. In my room, on the wall above my bed, is a window that leads to the back porch. I always had the window covered with a blanket because it creeped me out. Anyways, the window is the type of window that you have to open with a handle that twists. The handle was broken, so I could never open my window, so it was always hot in my room. I had to have a fan in there at all times, or else I couldn't sleep. Now, on with the story. One night, at about 12:50, getting close to 1 o'clock, I was sitting in my bed against the wall with the window right next to my head. Before I go into anything else, I had my 2 very protective pit bulls lying on my bed. It wasn't particularly quiet in my room, because the fan in my room is pretty loud. Anyways, I was on my tablet or laptop, I don't remember which one, but I remember that I was on Wattpad reading a story that my best friend had posted on there, when out of nowhere I heard a tap, 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 tap on my window, which of course startled me for the simplest fact that 1, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and 2, I know for a fact that none of my friends would ever tap on my window at a time like this. So you can probably guess that I was feeling a bit nervous. Both of my dogs were looking at the window with their ears perked and their hackles up. They weren't barking or growling, but you could tell that they had their guards up. Instead of lifting the blankets on my window, which of course I was too scared to do anyways, I got up off my bed as quietly as possible. If just in case there was someone out there, they wouldn't know I was awake. Thank God that my bedroom door was open, because it creaks loudly when it opens. I usually left my door open before I went to bed, so all the cold air in the house would flow into my room. I walked into the laundry room and opened the door, stepping into the back room as quietly as I could so the floor wouldn't creak. I peeked out the window enough to where I wouldn't be seen, as if they could see me anyways, because it was completely dark in my back room. But anyways, what I saw almost made my heart jump out of my chest. I saw a guy standing at my bedroom window with his face completely against the window. He was about 5'9", maybe 5'10". His clothes were torn up and he had long hair from what I could see. I have good eyesight in the dark, so I could make out faint details. I don't know how I was able to do this so calmly, but I walked back into the laundry room, shut the door and locked it. Then I walked down the hallway to my parents' room and woke my dad up. I told my dad everything and he was just dumbfounded. "How do you know?" he asked. When I told him, and I said that I went into the back room and checked, that's when he fully woke up and realised I was dead serious. He got out of bed and put some clothes on. Instead of going into the porch through the back room, he went through my brother's room and through his door that leads outside to the concrete walkway that would lead to the big driveway. Anyways, he went around the back to the backyard, and of course the guy that was at my window was leaving the way that my dad was coming. So they met head on. My dad ended up getting into a fight with this guy. At this point, my brother was already awake and was helping my dad. My mum had already called the police, who were on their way, and the dogs were freaking out. I was shaking really badly and at the verge of tears. Finally, the police came and arrested the guy. Supposedly, he was a homeless drug addict who assaulted and killed 4 14-year-olds a month prior to my incident. I guess I was his next victim, or was supposed to be. Creepy homeless guy, drug addict, assaulter, and killer. Let's not meet. Ever. Number 4. I've lived a rather embroidered life. I started thinking about some scary encounters I have been through. This is the most recent, and I feel a little nervous telling this, but here it goes. It was a really late night in July, or rather an early morning, and my boyfriend and I were snuggling on the couch in our apartment. We had both just worked double shifts, and my boyfriend and I always worked thirds, making it around 4:15 in the morning. My boyfriend stood up to get a beer, when suddenly he stopped in his tracks and furrowed his brow, as if to tell me that he heard something strange. I paused the television show that we were watching and listened. There was a knock at our sliding glass door. "Did you hear that?" my boyfriend asked me. "Yeah, but I think it's the neighbours again," I rationalised, referring to the loud couple that lived in the apartment above us. I will admit, we had been smoking a little marijuana about an hour earlier, so I thought my boyfriend was just being paranoid. But then we heard the knock again. It was definitely not the couple upstairs, as the noise sounded too close. My boyfriend looked puzzled. Neither of us had any idea who could be out there at such a late hour. "Those were definitely knocks," he said. "Where's one of the knives?" He was referring to 2 buck knives that we kept for protection. In the past, we had had thieves looking into our windows, as we have a lot of electronics placed nearby. So, he got them from my dad for me to protect myself, in case the thieves ever returned when I was alone. I told him that I didn't know where either knife was, so he frantically searched for one, before finding one in our storage closet. He started to walk towards the door, and my heart pounded in my chest. I pulled the blanket over my lap, up over my chest, as I was only wearing a swimsuit since it was a hot evening and I was trying to stay cool. I felt unnerved by the late night visitor, so I covered up the best that I could with the blanket as my boyfriend pulled the curtain aside. My boyfriend looked surprised when he saw a man in his late 30s or early 30s standing in front of our glass door. My boyfriend slid open the glass door only a little bit and confronted the man, who we both clearly determined was drunk. "Can I help you?" my boyfriend said with a little bit of annoyance. The man did approach our private community apartment at an ungodly hour after all. "What up?" the man asked, with a disturbing sense of confidence, despite his dirty appearance. He started to try peering past my boyfriend, trying to look at me, as he asked my boyfriend, "Just heard some freaky stuff around, and wondered if I could watch you." My boyfriend choked on his words, dumbfounded. He was much, much bigger than the man, probably by an entire foot, and 70 pounds or so. So the strangest sense of entitlement was extra off-putting. "No, absolutely not," my boyfriend managed, still awestruck. The man looked confused and kept trying to peer past my boyfriend at me, seemingly fascinated by whatever I was doing. He did not seem stable, especially after what happened next. "What?" he asked, seeming a little confused and angry, still trying to peer past my boyfriend to get a glimpse of me. I was hanging out by the bushes, watching this couple in the hot tub next to the main entrance of this place, and I wanted to watch you guys too. His voice was so authoritative it made me shiver. He was becoming far too persistent for my liking, and my boyfriend's liking. "No dude, what the hell?" my boyfriend said more assertively, flashing the small buck knife and towering over the intruder. The man's eyes widened and he ran off. We tried reporting to an anonymous tip line, as we lived in a high theft area, and it didn't seem like something that the cops would appreciate us reporting as an emergency. Unfortunately, the woman on the line redirected us to the line for the city, an hour north of ours. So, the man may still be wandering around watching people through their windows and through the bushes. We still checked outside our doors and windows to see if he was still sulking about there. I haven't quite felt safe in my apartment during my late nights alone. We are hoping to move soon. I just can't stop thinking about what may have happened if my boyfriend wasn't here with me. Would that man have tried to come after me? Would he have tried to assault me? I really don't know, but I really hope the police found him. So hey, creepy guy, if you hear anything about this and you can remember anything from that night, please never come to my house again. We're armed and you'll regret it. So, let's not meet. Number 5. I have told most of my creeper stories. I still have a few, but this one happened to my friend Cynthia. It was the 90s. Cynthia was 16, living in a rural area, 20 miles south of a major city. It was summer and she got a job at a fast food joint in the major city. It was at McDonald's. She was promptly assigned to a morning shift. Cynthia and her family lived at the very back of a subdivision. The homes were not close together. Beyond Cynthia and her family's backyard was, and still is, a thick forest that extends for miles. So, Cynthia would awaken around 4 in the morning to get ready for work, while the rest of her family was still sleeping. That morning, she was standing at the sink in front of the kitchen window, which was open since it was summer, making coffee for the 20-minute drive to her job. She kept hearing a sound, but with being half asleep, running water in the sink, and kind of rattling around in the kitchen making coffee, it didn't register for a few minutes what she was hearing. Finally, after she got her coffee going, she began to listen, and what she heard was someone outside the kitchen window, humming some sort of weird tune. She did not know the tune. It was just really weird, like some psycho out of some weird movie. The kitchen window was tiny, and not even a really tall person could have looked inside without a ladder. And Cynthia was too freaked out to look out the window herself. Cynthia came unglued at that point. She started screaming and ran to her parents' room. She began banging on their door. Her dad got up. He checked outside, but he did not find anyone, though there were some footprints outside. So her dad escorted her to the car and she went to work. Cynthia and her family never found out who the hummer was. But, as long as she was on the morning shift, since it was dark outside when she left for work, her dad would get out of bed and walk her to the car to make sure she was safe. It is kind of scary to think that if this creep had not have made his presence known by humming, she would have gone out in the yard to get in her car and leave for work, not having realised that there was someone out there with her. So, creepy humming stranger outside the kitchen window at 4 in the morning. I'm glad you and my friend did not meet. Number 6. Right after college, I was living in a ground floor corner apartment in an old building. It was a great location, had beautiful hardwood floors, and I almost never saw my neighbours. One window was at ground level and was always kept locked. The other faced a tiny back parking lot. I was directly above the sunken stairs to the basement and had a large fan wedged in with a block of wood. It seemed safe to have the window open on hot nights with just the fan in it, because I assumed it would be difficult, although not impossible, to climb onto the ledge over the stairway. One night, while my roommate was away travelling, I had just started to fall asleep and suddenly awoke to see the silhouette of a man squatting in my window, removing the fan. I used to sleep naked, so I grabbed the top sheet and ran towards my front door. I heard him jump into the room and follow me. When I got to the door, there was a deadbolt and chain on it, plus the lock doorknob itself. I frantically twisted the locks, but I couldn't get them all opened at once. I could hear the guy coming down the hall. Just as he came up behind me, I finally got them all open at once and darted out into the well-lit but empty hallway, slamming the door behind me. There was only one other apartment on the floor, which belonged to a midwife who was never home at night. I started banging on the midwife's apartment door and was shocked when she answered immediately. A guy crawled in my window and he's right behind me. She pulled me in and slammed the door. She then called the police, poured me a big glass of wine and told me it was her first night home in months. When the cops came, who both looked about 17 years old, they were not helpful. He, from the looks of your apartment, he wasn't here to rob you. Yeah, he. Thanks, Officers Beavis and Butthead. The next night, the super found me an air conditioner and nailed it into the window frame. And until I was able to find another apartment and move out, I slept with my friend's corgi at the foot of the bed. Even after moving, I really didn't feel safe again for several months. So, guy in the window, as well as the junior idiot cops, let's not meet again. Number 7. This happened a few years back when I was 19 or so. I was living at home with my mum at the time. I love a cold room, so my bedroom window tends to be open 24/7. At the time, I never closed my blinds either. I liked the cool breeze. One particular rainy day, I was at my friend's house. When it rained hard, I did tend to close the window. But since I wasn't home, I wasn't even thinking of it. My mum was home though. Sometimes she would go into my room and close the window for me if I was out. But I guess she didn't think of it either this afternoon. She heard a knock at the front door and went to see who it was. Now, I should mention that my mum works at a local deli and therefore has a lot of regular customers that she has gotten to know over the years. She hasn't ever talked to or even seen any of them outside of work before until now. An old man was at the door, one of her regulars. She seemed a bit confused, but greeted him nonetheless. He stopped by to tell my mother that my bedroom window was still open. "You forgot to close your daughter's window," he said. At the time, she was a bit confused, but grateful that he went through all this trouble of reminding her. It wasn't until I got home when we realised how strange it all was. This was a regular customer of hers that she had never seen outside of work before. He wasn't shocked to see my mum, as if he knew she lived here. He said, "Your daughter's window," implying he has seen inside my room. He also reminds my mum that she hasn't closed my window yet, implying he knows that she usually does. How long had this man been watching me through my bedroom window? Hello everyone, it is nearly Halloween. That means it is time for SHAF-TOBER. I hope you enjoyed that video. I will try to upload more regularly, and I apologise for not uploading for nearly a month now. As always, please subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment down below if you have any stories you'd like to share with me, or any recommendations for anything. As always, stay sinister.